What's up, Intercultural Communications? Welcome back to week 3. We are going to go into language and nonverbal communication. So, the first chapter was highlighting language. And so on page 117, if you have the non-SFCC edition of our textbook, you can see blog posts 6.2. It's talking about Amia and her English tutorial lab experience in Seoul, South Korea. The quote that I want to come from is the second to last paragraph. Amelia smiled and replied, "Of course, Shanhyo, no problem. If I can change the way that you use the word totally to completely in your research papers, I can work with any hot mess. Come before 5. Shanhyo was visibly upset with her comment. He excused himself with as much politeness as possible and left the table with a sullen face. Amiya left the cafeteria in complete confusion." Now, see, we can actually see a couple different things here. We can see from chapter 1 and 2, we can see complete cultural unconscious incompetence. She didn't know that they were in a more denotative style of speaking. So, where we come from a connotative style speaking in English, we like to use the words literally to mean something figuratively. So I literally died would mean I am being hung, killed, whatever. It means I'm losing homeostasis in my body and I'm about to pay the price of that. I am literally dying. But in this circumstance, she meant that more in the lines of I am literally dying, as I'm like, I'm sweating, I'm working hard, whatever it is. She didn't mean it personally. So when she called Shanhyo a hot mess, she not only did not notice that they are more of a denotative, but they are also she was also violating a semantic rule in their culture, since they had more of a placed meaning on hot and mess as something that is physically hot or tempered, so something that is angry, and a mess, which is chaotic and disorganized. And those two things in their culture are something that they hold very dear to them. We can also see that she did not kind of grasp that they have a more relational worldview, because they're more about just the concepts of just really the context and relationships between everything. They relationship worldviews tend to emphasize the importance and concerns of relational loyalty and trust, extended family connections, and intergroup members, and dignity honors. We can see that she did not quite see the in-group member, dignity, and honor, which is something that we need to be very aware of personally when we are dealing with different cultures. The second blog post that I want to do is actually an L chat 6.1 on page 124. It is from between Kayleen and Kanoa. So the backstory is that I guess Kanoa is karaoke or something. So Kayleen knocks on her neighbor's door. "Excuse me, it's past 11 o'clock already. The loud music and dancing around are really disturbing my sleep. Please stop your jumping and banging around right away. I have an important job interview tomorrow morning, and I want to get a good night's sleep. Some of us have to pay rent." Keota resentfully replied, "Well, this is the only time I can rehearse. I have an important audition coming up tomorrow. You're not the only one that is starving. You know I need to pay rent as well. Stop being so petty." Killian, frustrated, replied, "I really think you're being very annoying and intrusive. There is an apartment noise ordinance, you know, and if you do not bang around immediately, I'm going to file a complaint with the apartment manager, and he could evict you." Kenoa sarcastically and turning up the music louder, "Whatever, do what you want. I'm going to practice as loud as you want. Don't bother asking for my autograph when I become a Hollywood star." Now, see, we can actually see quite a few different things that are highlighted in our text. That's the reason why I picked this quote. We can see a direct style of communication. They're not beating around the bush at all. Kayleen wants to get sleep so that then she can end up being better at self-enhancing herself during her job interview tomorrow. We can also see that Noah has a lower context of communication with her, and she is also pretty much straight to the point, just like, hey, yeah, I'm going to get to be a star if I keep doing this. I got a rehearsal too. And so we can see that there's not too much of like, hey, that's really great what you're doing, but it's kind of 11, but it's 11 o'clock. There's no reading in between the lines. It's very straightforward. Please stop. I'm not going to stop. You have to stop or else you could get evicted. Just watch me type deal. It's kind of petty, to be honest, but there's not too much that we can really do whenever we have that. It could be important to kind of remember to code switch. In those types of hostile circumstances, we can actually pull away more of a higher context communication skill, and we can be more respectful and encouraging, and we might end up actually getting what we want in a different way. We're also going to be talking about, on Chapter 7, page 137, blog post 7.1, it highlights a college student by the name of Ashish. And so it was his experience with growing up in the United States when he moved here from India. So that's the last paragraph. My parents were angry that I had misbehaved and beat up another kid. I tried to explain to them that I was being made fun of for my clothes and tika. Then my counselor suggested to my parents that they should just be in more Western clothes so that I don't stand out. She also suggested that I try to fit in more and not display the red dot in school, and the adjustments will go easier. Within a year, we moved back to India. My parents found it too hard to adjust and did not want to forget our cultural traditions. 13 years later, my sister and I moved back to California. She continues to tie me a Rakesh every year, but she made sure that it does not have fancy decorations and is less colorful, and I continue to wash off the tika before I go to work. So, we can't really see any paralanguage in here, which are kind of the accent sounds and different things like that, like what it highlights on the next page, which is what's up with that, what is up with that, what is up with that, and what's up with that, which all, with different kind of vocal inflections, we can see something different. That one doesn't have anything to do with that. What this one has to do with is cultural display and artifacts. Cultural display is going to be the procedures we learned for managing the way that we express our emotions. Of course, Rakesh was not taught to show his anger, but he was feeling so kind of ostracized and made fun of for his cultural traditions that he felt it necessary to kind of retaliate in a aggressive way. This is also kind of a nonverbal communication, since it is Anash's way of going, hey, you're hurting my feelings, I want to hurt your face, and punching the kid in the face. So I think it's kind of important that we hit on the gestures and kind of regulators that we have put in place. So regulators are nonverbal behaviors in conversation to control, maintain, or regulate the pace of conversation, which doesn't really maintain the conversation to punch, but I really wanted to try to correlate that in somehow. The gestures are cultural specific and significant forms of nonverbal communication, which I do believe punching is quite a strong gesture. It's going to be an illustrator too, kind of. I mean, you can do this as like an illustrator of I'm gonna punch you. Probably did, doesn't specify, but anyways, we're just going to assume that he was actually showing a gesture, and all because his cultural artifact, which is an adornment that someone places a meaning upon, was being kind of neglected. I don't really know the quite right word to articulate it. But either way, we're going to move on to the last one, and this is the quote that I felt could wrap up everything together well. It is on page 152. And it's talking about being flexible towards living with both types of time orientation people, which I believe can be true for almost anything. Finish each day and be done with it. You have done what you could. Some blunders and absurdities no doubt crept in. Forget them as soon as you can. Tomorrow is a new day. Begin it well and serenely, and with too high a spirit to be encumbered with your old nonsense. I believe this is important so that then we can actually talk about time orientation and the cultural differences that we're going to be witnessing throughout all of intercultural communications. So the time difference that they are referring to is a monochronactic versus polychronactic. In the polychronactic, they will emphasize more on living in the present and the cultural experiences of benefiting from one another. So they're the type of person that we were all talking about that will spend like 3 hours talking to a friend while you're waiting for a dinner reservation that was 3 hours ago with them. Something that we as a monochromatic society cannot fully comprehend. But this highlights on us being a more open-minded individual and remembering that each culture is going to be a little bit different, and that we need to emphasize the differences between gestures, regulators, communication between connotative, denotative meanings, and everything in between. Because we could mean we're number one here, but then, just like it highlighted in our text, we could be saying to, like, up yours to someone, and that's not at all what we want to do. I guess unless you're trying to go for that. But either way, I know I missed a lot of stuff in this. It's kind of a little bit more hard to find the quotes this week, I found. Those quotes were sticking out to me. Maybe that was my own cultural upbringing. I was so biased towards just one set of connotative style, linear worldview that it made it hard for me. But either way, tell me what you think below, and yeah, week 3 is done. Let's get to week 4.